Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mish, Men, another episode. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode where we discussed, we had an interview, rather, with Tony Moffitt.
He was awesome.
He was awesome. That was a fun episode.
Yep.
I am Adam Mauser, and my partner in crime is Dusty Labar.
Hello, everybody.
And Dusty, why don't you go introduce? We have a cast of characters, emphasis on characters, with us on Mish, Men this week.
So this week we obviously all had some travel issues because of the winter storm of 2024.
That's right.
So RFTB Studios decided to do one major recording where part one is on Reaching for the Bars podcast. So you can listen to part one. That was released yesterday on Monday. You can go back and listen to that.
Different topic.
Different topic.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah.
It's
Different
similar.
topics.
Different
similar.
tenor.
Yeah.
Different vibe.
Different tenor. Different things we talked about. But
That's right.
if you want to hear that, go back and listen to Reaching for the Bars under RFTB Studios. And then we
Parental
kept
guidance is suggested.
It's probably PG 14,
15 maybe.
16.
How
You should
old
be
are
able to
How
drive.
old- I was going to say, how old are you when you drive?
You should be able to drive 16.
Should be able to drive.
And then we kept everybody here, the whole RFTB Studios team, to do an episode of
That's
Mishmash Men. Where
Except
we're
for
gonna,
Abby the intern.
Yep, Abby the intern is not here,
We do miss her.
Yeah.
but we tried to do two cameras.
awesome when she was
Abby the intern, but it didn't work out for us today. We had some technical difficulties with Andrew's crap computer. So we're using an old Lenovo.
It's the software.
Back, am I right?
It's a software, but my hardware is working just fine over there, so it's fine. I don't know what that meant exactly, so it's fine.
Yeah, let's move
It
on.
seemed
So Adam's going to lead us in some discussion today, and it's going to be with the whole RFTB Studios crew.
And with us, we have Mr. Caleb Whitney
hello.
and Mr. Mabry Cook
Hello.
to my right. And lastly, but not leastly, is the producer for RFTB, Andrew Weis.
Hello, everybody.
So a couple of months ago, we had an episode where I guested one of 7 times from last year. And
Was
we
it
had,
only 7?
that's what Abby said. I thought it was 3.
Man, it feels like more.
So you thought it was 3.
I thought it was 3. Legit
feel
thought
like
it was
it's
3.
more.
Yeah.
Hey.
But we had a good discussion where we talked about education, we talked about work ethic, we talked about any number of things. So I kind of wanted to continue that because it's relevant to today. We all work, and we have some of us that we have kids in school. We've all been through school of some aspect. So I wanted to start the discussion off with that, and to kick it off, to get the ball rolling. I wanted to highlight there is a dearth of skilled trades and that sort of thing, and the emphasis on higher education, meaning beyond high school, and whether or not that's a good thing. So let's just open it up.
Do you think there's less of an emphasis recently on forcing kids from high school to go to college, or do you think it's because I know I graduated in 2006, and in that time everybody was going to college,
yeah.
or I should say the emphasis was 100% you have to go to college. There's not really another. Your parents were like, go to college. You're not going to make anything of yourself.
Right.
There's
You won't
no
make
other-
enough money.
You won't
There's
make
no
enough
other
money.
route.
There's no other route, or you're going to be this like lowly janitor is basically what, like, maybe not specifically that, but you're going to have this
You'll
like
never,
you'll never amount to
anything.
I want, my parents were like, I want you to have
Maybe.
better than I had,
Right,
go to
yeah.
college, do these things. Do you think there's less of an emphasis on that now, or do you think it's the same thing? Obviously there's monetary issues tied with that now.
Yeah.
They're more prevalent, but
Maybe less of maybe a little less from then, because back then I don't think like tech and stuff was as big and popular, but there are like routes now where you don't just have to go do a physical trade. There are some things you can go acquire some skills outside of going to like trade school and
well, I
stuff.
think Andrew's a perfect example. He went to school for rock
rock music, geography, basically.
geography,
Yeah.
and now you're doing stuff in
Geography or geology?
So it was geography, specifically GIS, which is like a computer-based system for mapping and stuff like
but
that.
now
Okay.
but now you're doing a lot of computer
So I'm
programming,
a software developer, specifically working on geography software.
So
it's
it's
kind
tied in, but
no,
you have
I'm
a
not-
skill that you didn't
I'm
acquire
not
in
degree
college.
qualified for
Yeah.
the job I have. Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of somebody that could you have gotten this job without the college degree?
In general,
Yeah.
no college degree.
Yeah,
See,
Could you have got the interview?
there? You see what he just said there, though. I'd like to pause on that. Without a college degree, he It's a thing, though. It definitely still
It's
is.
definitely a thing.
It's a thing. Like there's still a.
Could you have
big
got the
stigma.
interview? That's the question. Could you have
Right.
gotten the interview
So if I
without a
had the
degree?
experience level, yeah, they would probably hear you out. But
It's hard to get experience level. Like
it's
at
hard to get
young.
experience level without having a degree that would allow you to get it. Yeah,
When
that's
I was,
The hardest job is your first job
No doubt.
yeah,
because that's what's going to give you the
So
experience. for
I
your
wanted
next
to
one.
bring it back to your first question.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's a mix of both. On one end, there's a lot of schools, like I know, for example, Madison County school system, they require some career readiness for everybody who graduates. So you either like have to have an ACT, you have to take an ACT and have a score, or you have to take the ASVAB if you plan to go the military route.
what do you mean
or
you have to take it?
They require that you have some sort of credential that allows you to take a next step in your career. So it's
Or you
like,
can't graduate?
Yes.
That-
And
I don't know
whether
about
that's
that.
an ACT, but
That
it's
seems
not.
wild.
So it's ACT, military, but also things like getting into trade schools, having some trade certificate program that you've done.
I think people.
But
like,
honestly,
think
some,
that's the right stuff,
but some of
though,
it's
but-
also just like general career, like general workforce readiness. So like,
You said
hey,
that was Madison County.
like I'm certified to go work at Target. Like they have like a certificate.
Yeah, that's
for that.
important.
And so, but on the flip side, student loans are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
It's
Why do you
crazy.
think that is? Anybody?
Oh my god. Dude.
Why do I think student loans are higher?
Why do you think the cost of higher education is so much higher?
Oh boy,
I mean,
I
because
don't know that answer.
Because the cost of
because they
professors are
can
higher.
once you raise the bar and people pay for it, they're gonna.
I mean, that's true.
Do you think subsidizing by the government
Oh, I mean, anytime the government's tied in anything, it's always makes it worse.
it makes it more expensive?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes it
it
worse.
always weirded me out that I had like a federal loan, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, doesn't seem like that, you know. As a kid,
The government's like, you want us to help you out?
yeah, as a kid, you're like, it's a weird. Now, like being through it, like younger, I really didn't understand what I was getting into. You know, like student loans and like what that meant for my life going forward and stuff like that. So, it's like a little background about me is I'm a project manager at a commercial construction company. So I'm a big like advocate for like go learn a trade.
Right.
Because I mean, I necessarily didn't, but I see people make boo-koodles of money
Yeah.
going out there and being electricians, plumbers, HVAC guys, and like you don't like, and it's what they do is they go learn something early and then they immediately go get out
Right.
there and work. And if you're like, well, I want to, you know, be a top of my corporation, well, you can own your own company. You can own your own plumbing company and go out there and make a lot of money.
Right, and you make all that overhead that the company would normally make.
That's right.
Yeah,
And I-
with
You could be a
board
millionaire
members
running
and-
a plumbing company.
Yeah, and people will pay, you know, and the good thing about a skill like that is if you're good at it, people will pay you to be good at it. Like you can craft your skill and go make more money. And
Right.
so I'm a big advocate of, you know, like let's get people back in trade schools because not, you know, everyone goes through college and thinks that they have to go get that. And if that's your route and you want to pursue that, that's fine. A big thing for me too is that I did was like Caleb said, your hardest job is your first job.
Right.
Well, I went and I had a business management degree, and I knew there were some circumstances I wanted to be in construction, but with scholarships and stuff, I went to a school that did not have a construction program. So I knew I was going to be fighting an uphill battle in that. And I talked to my dad, and you know, we were like, well, I need to start applying for internships and try to get into a construction company. And it was very hard back then because, you know, I was trying to get into companies, and they're like, well, you're just doing business. Like, you don't have a construction. You're not
Right.
working on construction. Why would we, you know? And I'm like, well, like, bring me in, give me a shot, let me learn from my internship. And so I ended up getting my first job out of college with the company I interned with. So it was like, that's another thing. If you go to college, I know people that were like, well, I'm not really going to get an internship. And that like blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, like what? Like, because it's still like, you can't just go get an education and hope to pop out. Those are those people that have a hard time is they go get a 4-year education, which it means something. It still does. People still see it as you have the ability to go in, work for 4 years, complete something, and
Yeah,
boom.
can I?
Yeah.
Let me tag on to that because I was gonna
Yeah.
say it earlier. When I was in the when I was a firefighter in Myrtle Beach, one of the requirements to be a higher level officer was a 4-year degree.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it was in. It just had to show that you had the ability to put 4 years of work in and
To be
finish.
committed to
and-
something.
Yeah, correct.
I mean,
Military does that
military
too.
as well.
Is
right?
that sufficient though? I mean,
Well, you could go.
It's a state of the affair right now. And back to your thing, I think we're in a transition point where people are like, you know what, is that necessary? But to your immediate point, which is they said you had to have a degree, is that necessary to be a senior firefighter or an officer.
I sure don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree. I don't.
If
think
you
so
have
either.
somebody that grew up in the fire, like there's
Experience.
in my experience, in my personal experience, a lot of these firefighters start as volunteers when they're super young.
Right.
Yeah.
So by the time they're 30, they've had 14, 15, 16 years of experience.
Yeah.
And then they become a firefighter. Then they work for another 10 years. They're a lieutenant. And then they have the ability. So they may not have a college degree, but they for sure know more than a 30-year-old man that just stepped into firefighting.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. They know way more about all the in and outs. They've had to take certain tests, and it's not a college test. It's a certification to make sure that you are with the trends or with the current, whatever it may be. So there were I think there were some young lieutenants and young guys, but that was like not the norm.
Right.
It was because all these other guys had college degrees. It's like, he came out of college with a degree in fire science. It's like, okay, well, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, most things in life, here you'll agree with this. When you're in the field in anything versus the office staff, meaning like engineering, the argument is this should work.
Yeah.
And then the argument for the field is, well, it doesn't.
That's right.
It's not working. So we have to change. But an engineer mind will say, well, it should work because I drew it out.
Right.
Here it is on paper.
Yeah.
It should work. And you're like, well, it doesn't work. And that's where that practical application of it in the field of all those years where you can use that experience to be like, well, a lot of this stuff may not work. It may be good in theory, but it doesn't work.
You discover that kind of thing in engineering with years of experience that engineering there are a number of assumptions that you have to bring to the table, but a young engineer doesn't understand the limitations of some of those.
Oh yeah,
and how those are weighted.
I mean, that's a great point. A young one, some of the older ones now know the work with field and like, hey, this is my idea. Like, does it work? You love to hear that. But that is a young one's like, hey, it works here.
Yeah.
It should work out there. It's like, all right, man, I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of someone like James that you guys have had on the podcast, who's an engineer. Like listening to him talk about his work and that type of stuff. Like it's like you can understand like the young engineers. He needs to kind of build them up, grow them a little bit.
When I was younger, I realized this was I've been working 4 years out of college, and I realized my company sent me to, I can't remember where I was at it. Might have been South Carolina with you guys. But they sent me to Charlotte to go look at this problem one of our hospitals was having with their HVAC unit. I don't know if I was the most qualified person, but they were like, we need you to go look at this and help resolve this issue. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But I was in the transition where I just got a promotion. I was trying to really make a name for myself. And so in a pretty big company, in a pretty big span of where we have people, they're like, we're going to fly Mabry Cook from another state, get him a hotel room, let him go look at this, and then fly him back to his job. It was like a 2-day ordeal.
Right.
So I fly out, I go, and I do this thing, and I get out, and I'm at this hospital for 30 minutes. They give me all the information. They show me what I'm looking at. I spend the rest of the night in my hotel room. The next morning, I present what I think they should do. I get on a plane, and I hop back. And I was sitting there, and I was like, that's like a lot of money. And I was like, and like, they were like, hey, good job. Appreciate your help. And I was like, man, like the value is, because I used to be in the mindset of the value that I can bring is like, am I working more, like, am I working 60 hours a week? Am I really like giving my company like the hours they need? And that was like a moment where I really realized that like the value that I can bring value in 30 minutes with the knowledge and experience that I've gained that other people can't. Like they
Using
didn't
that judgment.
They didn't go get someone down the street to come look at it because they were like, they can spend 4 hours there and they're not gonna get the same results. We're gonna fly this dude out in 30 minutes. He'll give us the results we want. Yeah. And I think today's culture is becoming more aware of that.
I agree.
Like,
I agree with that 100%.
You can work from home. I don't care if you work 40 hours. This is what you need to get done. How long it takes you to get it done is based off of your skill and your ability. I think the world is making that transition to be like, your value is not, can you put in a 40-hour work week? Yeah. It's like, all right, if I give you a task. If
you can solve a problem that's in 30 minutes, it took somebody else 8 hours to solve, you're worth the same or more amount of money than that person.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter if you worked 30 minutes or
because there's a work stoppage until that problem gets solved.
Right. So you're essentially saving everybody money by doing it faster.
But old school is like, that was like your value came from like, are you willing to show up? Work? I mean, people solve like they definitely took advantage of people with like if you could solve problems. Like, hey, you should probably be a manager.
Chairs company.
Yeah. But I would say that the big realization is like companies and people are realizing is like, oh, like this 40-hour work week and this, showing up to the office every day is not like, hey, are you still able to like function and do your job? Like, oh, you are? Okay. Like there's different ways to skin this cat.
Let me boil this down to like this simple, not a simple thing, but like a thing that we can all understand. If Caleb walks up to a client at the gym and fixes they have an issue with their clean and jerk, he does it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And then, an alternate universe, Andrew walks over and he's with that person for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
They get the same result. I promise you the person that did it in 20 seconds is like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy knows what the heck he's talking about. Andrew got the same result.
Yeah.
They fixed whatever the problem was. It's just that person still sees the same amount of value.
Yeah.
They see a reason to pay that.
Right. Same results.
The same result. It's just that Caleb was able to transfer that knowledge to him so quickly versus Andrew, who may not have the same experience that Caleb does.
Right.
So it makes a big difference, and that spans to like every workforce everywhere. Is that you want that person that can do it like this?
Well,
And so
I was just going to say, to add to that, the reality I think that is coming to the workforce is that there's a separation of people who go to college who either continue education or like you who never did any internships or get experience, and they are just like getting run over by these kids who got a bachelor's degree but also did like a bunch of internships. Like,
right.
I was like part of a hiring team 2 jobs ago for some guy, and like we turned down like 3 or 4 people who just got their masters because they were people who just were way better for the job, who were younger
Right.
and didn't have that, but they had experience.
I think it's at the point where it's going to be a hard transition because people are seeing that, there's value. But the question is, how do you get your foot in the door? Because I want people to go out. I want everyone to go out and like, let's be real with ourselves. Everyone doesn't need to be a manager. Like we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need people to do a lot more jobs. And I physically see a lot of older faces in the field than I used to see. And I don't see a lot of, backfilling.
That's 100% turnover with these younger generation. Everybody's like jumping. And if they kind of like, I hear it all the time in the field. It's like, I can't find.
Give some background to what you do.
I'm a residential home builder project manager, thanks to Mabry, who quit and I took his job. But what happens is if you have a backup on production and it's from any of the trades, the answer you'll hear is it's hard to find good people to work.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is these guys are willing to take somebody directly out of high school, no experience, and be like, I will train them to do things the way that I want them to do it. I'll pay them.
Because you hire attitude and train skills.
Correct.
Yep.
So I will, yes, 100%. So I will train this person, but then now, like it happens, you hire the wrong person. It happens.
100%.
And they train, and you spend all this money. Like they cost
It's a significant investment.
They cost you so much money to get them and then when they get close to the end, they end up like there's grass is greener. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right.
And but these guys are willing to give you this company is basically saying, I will pay you to learn a skill that will pay you a lot more money in the future.
Yeah.
Like you can go take a test to be a master electrician at some point or whatever, be a master plumber or whatever it may be.
I think what Adam said like really hits it is like the right people, you can teach them how to do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, because what always cracks me up is like people are like, let's just take my job, for example. Like you're a PM at this construction company. If I leave my company and go to our direct competitor, 100%, about 50% of the things that we do are different the way they do it here than they do it here.
It's a process.
So now I have to learn how to do it over there. So like the argument goes is like, yeah, you might know, like you need to know some foundational stuff, but like if you're hiring the right people, like Dusty, for example, I was here in Huntsville and I was like, I need to get someone here to build houses for me. I called Dusty. He's like, I don't have any experience. And I was like, I know you don't. I was like, but you're the right person. I can teach you how to build a house. That's not the hard part. I know that once you like step foot out here,
right,
you're going to do exactly what you need to. You'll learn how to build a house and you'll be great. And boom. Now
it's actually pretty easy.
Now he runs the division. So it's like, it's the right people will learn how to do the right stuff.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right in that. Because like whenever I first moved out here, they put me in charge of like my original job. Whenever I moved out here, they put me in charge of the program, and I sold all these extra services to this plant as in my position. And whenever I left that company, now all of a sudden all these extra services are being like the original company is like, you know what? we don't need this and we don't need this and we don't need this. And all of a sudden those services are being taken back, which makes my original company that I worked for look bad because the person that they hired in my replacement isn't able to fulfill those services and stuff like that. Because, I mean, that's not it sounds like a brag on me, but it's not
awesome.
It's,
you
but
are
like,
awesome.
But like if like I'm not a salesman by any means, but I was able, through my work ethic and that type of stuff, I was able to acquire these other services that the company wanted to buy from my company because I was the one that fulfilling them.
Yeah.
And whenever they hired my replacement, that person couldn't fulfill them in the same capacity. So they're like, you know what, this isn't the same capacity that we wanted. So that we're going to back it off a little bit and stuff like that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So to pull on that thread a little bit, I saw what we started off talking about was what I was asking was college, the emphasis of college and the inflation of the value that college brings. I know at least one company, and might even be a sector or an industry sector that is now not requiring college degrees in order to at least get an interview.
That's big.
It is big. That's
a big
huge. And I think there's a lot of value in that because I think culturally we have put too much emphasis on college. The government subsidized a ton of it. And high schools push a lot of people in that direction that may or may not be either they're not suited for that work, whatever it is, but they just go to college anyway because they, that's what I'm supposed to do. And we're missing out on skilled trades and other jobs where, a college degree doesn't help you out at all. So there's that end of it. And the other end that we'll get to towards the end is like, how are we training our kids to work? Some of that is because we keep raising the minimum wage. And I would argue that the minimum wage is zero. A great example of that is like McDonald's. They're a great indicator. And what they end up doing is, well, we're going to automate this job. I need fewer people, so we'll automate order taking. Mm-hmm. You just go to the menu, and so now they have...
Click a bunch of buttons.
Right. You just click some buttons and get your order. You don't interact with a surly human. But what you end up seeing is when they raise the minimum wage, now labor is at a premium, and so now, I'm going to pay fewer people. You get worse service, but everyone accepts it. But who misses out? The entry-level jobs. And you kind of talked about that earlier. Like, it's hard to get your first job.
Yeah.
But it should be easier to get your first job because you learn to work.
That's right. That's where you gain your experience.
Right. So skilled trades, let's hit that up a little bit about, and I know Mabry's got some opinions about it, and Dusty, because they manage people with skilled trades. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that a little bit, about the dearth of skilled trades that was drying up, and it sounds like it might be getting better.
Well, I think even Huntsville, the Home Builders Association has actually started a pseudo college,
like a mentorship
to get people in, because that's the problem that everybody's having. So like, I think there was a time that we all looked down on those trades.
For sure,
right?
Like culturally, we still do.
Yeah,
I think that's
the problem.
So here's the issue: until you look at it like an electrician, and they're like driving up.
What they're actually doing.
They're like driving up in a wild truck, and you're like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm an electrician.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Well, I'm really good, so I make all this money."
The stipulation of the plumber with his butt crack hanging out, for lack of a better term, and stuff like that. Like
stereotype.
Like it's such a terrible stereotype because if you meet a true plumber, like, I don't want to do any plumbing work for sure. That's the worst kind of work. So like, a plumber coming up and doing that type of work, they're very knowledgeable about what they're doing because there's a lot of ins and outs of it, and then they're also willing to provide their services to you. So
at the worst times,
it's wild. It's wild to think that, like, especially this past week, when things are the most, like, what are the most important things in your life that are just screwed up if they go down?
Plumbing and electricity.
Your power, your electricity, and your HVAC system.
Yeah.
If any of those three things go down, I promise you will pay whatever it takes.
And you don't college degree, who cares?
Yeah. You don't ask your plumber. You're like, excuse me, do you have a degree in plumbing?
I'm not going to let you work on my
You're
plumbing.
like, no, my water's not running. I need it, or my HVAC system's not working. I need it running. You're just like, whoever can get out here, I trust that they're part of a company. I trust. I mean, legitimately like super important.
To go back to your question though, is I don't know that it's getting any better right now, because what I see is the industry recognizing that it is becoming a program, and they're doing things where they set up programs and they're trying to do all this stuff. So I think that's definitely helping. But I think what's also happening at the same time that we're like, okay, well, maybe you don't have to have a college degree. We're now seeing a whole different group of people being like, I can be an influencer. I can be a software engineer. I can teach myself how to code. I can go learn how to, market affiliate. Like I don't need to go get a college degree, but there's a whole slew of other things where I don't really have to go work outside and do manual labor either.
You know what I think the bigger
That's
problem
dangerous,
is?
though.
You know what I think the bigger problem is the generation that's coming up now wants things almost immediately.
Yes.
So what you're saying is correct. They want to do those things. But if you talk to an electrician, it's like, how long does it take you to become a master electrician? It's like, well, 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. I have to do this, and then I have to go be a journeyman. Then I have to work under a master electrician. Then I have to go take a test. 10 years of work. So those people that are growing up in this generation are like, well, I just want to be a master electrician now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you need 1,000 hours of experience.
Yeah. Right. You can't show up on a job site and answer a question in 30 minutes now.
Yeah, you can't do it.
It's going to take you 8 hours to figure that out.
That's where training guilds really come in handy.
About. Yeah.
Yes.
We used to have more training guild activity, and they're still alive because electricians, plumbers, that sort of thing. There are still guilds, and there are rules for apprenticeship programs.
Yeah.
But it's recognized internally.
Yeah.
But your average bear doesn't realize that.
No, and I mean, it goes back to what you're saying. If they're paying you $15 an hour at McDonald's to flip burgers, now what is the electrician having to pay to get good guys out there just to carry?
Yeah, it definitely
because your
definitely
first year
makes a big
guys are
difference.
just carrying pipe and holding ladders. Like those
they're
guys
not. They're literally making more work than it has to be.
They're quote unquote interns, basically. Is what they are.
That's exactly.
And that's
right.
and that's where you learn. Like if your goal is to become a master electrician, for example, you will watch the master electricians in that role and see the situations that they get into, and they'll be like, oh, they did this to solve the issue and stuff like that. Like for myself, for example, like I learned more on my internship in my first job than I did in the 4 years of college by far. An
issue with that is higher level problem solving. Is like some of those guys won't be master electricians. They're not going to be higher level problem solvers, and that's okay. But we still need all these people to make these things. Like I was just thinking, if every electrician in the world was like, I'm going to stop working today because I'm on strike.
Yeah.
But then if every business administration master or degree was like, I'm going to go on strike, we'd be like, oh, and so what? I don't really do it.
It's going to affect your company.
Yes. I mean, it's not going to hurt me at all, but like those are things that affect us directly.
Like if you and me went on strike, everyone on the job sites would be like, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, we just need to figure out something.
But who's going to pay us?
Yeah.
Is the check still come out Friday?
Yeah. But no, I think to not go too deep on this, but what I see as the real problem is the people in, like, I work for a great company. You work for a great company. You work for a great company. I don't really know y'all's companies, but
it's great.
Company. It's great. Yeah, it's a great company.
No, I do enjoy working for
But I
my
think
company.
if you've actually been out in the world, you realize that most companies aren't great, and the people leading those companies aren't what I would call the right people. And so, there's still that kind of mindset up there. Well, I had to have a college degree. You have to have a college degree.
Fair.
And so until we can kind of break that down and be like, because I'm not afraid to be like, hey, Dusty, I can bring you here, and in weeks I can teach you to be better at something than I am. And you don't see that nowadays. People want to be like, if I had to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
fair.
like that's to
Yeah,
me.
It sounds like it's a cultural problem.
But there's
crazy.
a huge resistance to adapt to how the generation thinks. But to be honest, there's a reason my generation, the tail end of the millennial generation, thinks this way. And like, I'm not calling any of us, because I think we all think very independently, didn't raise kids this way, but like the boomer generation, Gen X, taught the millennials and Gen Z to be that they were special, and that they were entitled to having a special life.
Is that a generational problem though, or a cultural problem?
Well, I think that
both. I mean,
I
it
think
just
that-
happened.
I think
it
that-
is like just like following the generation pass of like the silent generation, and this generation felt
I think
they needed to teach their kids differently.
I think the issue was,
yes,
and
I
you're
do
probably
think-
saying this, is that like when my dad was my age, or younger, getting ready to go. Like people that went to college were different.
Yeah.
It was a special thing to go to college.
Right.
It wasn't
It
that
was unique,
it wasn't that everybody
Right.
went. So he equated the people that went to college as successful people. So his message was, if you go to college, you'll be successful.
Yeah.
Because he saw the people that went to college as being successful.
That's right.
But not everybody was going to college back then. Now that was a different time, because during the Vietnam War, it's like you had like two options at that time when my dad was growing up, was you go to Vietnam or you can go to college. So, you know.
Wow.
But yeah, well, he picked Vietnam.
Hey, that's because he's awesome.
So he was like, "Ooh, I'm going Air Force." But so he made that like a priority, but I really think it was because he saw these people that went to college and became successful.
Right.
But I think a lot of people saw that, but then it kind of muddied the waters, because then they made everybody go. Like there's people that went that shouldn't have went.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to go. You don't have
right.
to. There's other things you can do. You don't have to go.
We're going down a deep hole here, but it goes back to like what you're saying is every parent wants to do what's best. Not every, but most parents want to do what's best for their kids. And me and Gabby have this argument all the time where she's like, "You're too hard on the kids," and I tell her, I was like, "That is my job. I want to give my kids candy and lollipops and snuggle in bed and tell them they're the best thing ever, but that is not going to prepare them for the real world." One day my kids are going to walk out my front door and never come back to me as like their father and
caregiver.
A caregiver, right? They're going to walk out and there's nothing I can do for them if I don't prepare them. Yeah, they're 3 and 4, and I'm
Hey, the clock's ticking.
the clock, and they're learning right now, and I want them to know that just because you want chocolate milk doesn't mean anything. You don't get what you want all the time. And Gabby's like, "Well, that's hard." Well, life is hard, and I think that a lot of parents don't make that. They're like, my life was hard. I want to make sure my kids have the softest upbringing ever.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
their
yeah.
kids grow up and they're the softest.
There's not a
kids
truer
ever.
quote than hard times.
Oh yeah.
Hard times make hard men. Hard men make easy times. Easy time make
Well, I'd like
like
to
soft men.
Yeah.
I'd like to emphasize too what I was saying about the generational tendencies of teaching. It's not out of malice. I don't think any parents are doing this. Like, in a
No.
way.
I'm not saying it's out of
any
malice.
parent wants their kid to have the best experience, and they like it's not crazy to think you want your kid to be the president, but like when every kid thinks that, I mean,
Well,
you're gonna have some
I think
issues.
we're at a time where you can see if your kid's in high school or like middle school, high school, and you can see what they're doing in school and what they struggle with and they have a hard time with.
Yeah.
Where you can make an educated decision to be like, well, you're not going to go to school to be a doctor, maybe.
Yeah.
But like, here's some other options. Like, you don't have to go to school.
And
to
that's
be a
not
doctor.
a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
But I'm just telling you that's not happening. Yeah.
Right.
So
But it should, right? Like you
Yeah, it
should.
should.
You should.
Every kid grows up thinking they can be whatever they want because their parents are like, you can do.
And it's just not
whatever
true.
They're being
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
you can be
because their
whatever you
parents
want.
And their teachers are telling them.
And
that
Caleb's
they-
like, no, you can't.
and the culture. So, but back to what you were saying before about, and I asked the question about, is it generational or cultural? I think it's more of a cultural influence than a generational thing. And if you normalize the generations, it's not necessarily the influences of that particular generation. It's the influences of the culture.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree with that, but
Yeah.
I'm only conflating it to just for like time. Like it just happened. That's when it happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
So-
when it passed
Yeah.
along. Yeah.
So I think culturally we need to, and you can't affect the generation like when you were born, but
Right.
you can certainly affect culturally.
Sure.
In the microcosm that is the family. And
Sure.
the strongest unit for that is, the mother and father in the home influencing their children as best they can, just back to the point you're making. So how can we better influence our children and to an extent their children on how we can change this paradigm to where college is great, you got to go to college no matter what it is, get your 4-year degree. How can we influence that?
We're gonna put so much pressure.
Well,
on
yeah,
it.
that's
I
yeah,
think a big
yeah.
part of it really stems from teaching your kids that they are not special. That is like an imperative thing you need to teach your kids. And if you want to be special, that is your choice.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Not that your kid's not special, is no one, you have to make yourself special.
Yeah.
No one is going to ever do anything for you.
They're special to you.
Well, I mean,
That's
They're
a good
special
thing.
in certain regards,
Yeah.
Are you
but they're
talking-
not special enough to where they can do anything they want.
Yeah.
That is not a true statement.
Like
You
like
can't
you're
do
talking
anything.
about you're talking about like everybody gets a trophy kind of thing.
Yes.
Like that's
Well, that's part of
not
it for
that's
sure, yeah.
that's not realistic.
It's unrealistic.
But I
and
think it's just
But
like,
not everybody gets a trophy in everything. But just because you don't get a trophy in football doesn't mean you may not get it in baseball.
Right.
There's different things that everybody excels
Well,
at.
I think you got to go out there and you got to fail. You got to like try.
You have to fail. Well, failing's a big part of it. You have to fail.
And it has to be like, that's the thing. It's like you have to go do it. You know, like I can't make you a good, as your parent, I can't make you a good football player. I can't make you a doctor. And I think a lot of kids nowadays, like their parents, I have friends that are my age and they still like live close enough to their parents, and their parents still like, you know, influence their lives in such a degree. It's like, yeah, y'all don't live in the same house, and like, but I mean, you're still back in high school. Like your mom's still making like your peanut butter and jellies and packing your lunch for school.
There's trouble
like,
with that.
You know, like they were like, they did what their parents were able to allow them to do. And it's like, my parents were like, we love you the most. There's no doubt about it. But if you can go out there and be homeless and die for all we care, like we're not going to help you, because if we do, then we have failed you. You know,
Right.
There's a big push for where people are like, it stinks when my kid moves away and makes a life for themselves.
Right.
But also, I'm a good parent. I've done my job. They're able to go out there. They can function without me. They can do whatever they want to do. They're not.
Got to be a great feeling. I mean, you is the most experienced father.
I don't know. I got one now.
Old Finley.
She's 10 months old, and I brought the hammer down the other night. I said no.
So in that regard to parents and your role, like the clock starts as soon as they're born.
Yeah.
Really before they're born, but when they're born for sure. You have so much influence in the beginning, and that wanes over time. And what you're trying to do is raise adults that can function on their own. They can do their taxes. They can be contributing members. And the big thing is, no matter what it is that they do. So one might be the star basketball player. One might be a physical therapist. One might be into cooking and providing a service like catering.
Yeah.
You love them all the same, but you try to see which way they're going and what their likes are, what their affinity is for, and you try to bend them that way and give them every advantage. But eventually, you got to back away and just say, hey, you're on your own. Yeah. Just because I'm, rooting for this one in this aspect of what they're doing, that doesn't mean I love you any less. And that's hard. That is really, really hard to do as a parent.
Yeah, sure. One of the best things my parents did for me in that age is that I think a lot of kids could hear and will help some of that stuff. And it shows you there's so many different routes. And my parents left it very open for me. Is, I chose to I was in a town where a lot of people stayed in that town. They went to the junior college in that town. It was just kind of like you grow up, you find your high school sweetheart, but you don't move. You might go off to college for a little bit, but you come back. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I don't really like this at all. I was like, I don't. And my dad and mom were like, well, look, you can be whatever you want to, but you gotta be able to bleed for it. Like, what do you want?
Right.
And I chose football because I realized I was okay at it and I could get a scholarship. But that wasn't my passion. My passion was I wanted to get out in the world and do something and go be good at something. Like, I wanted to just get out and go make a name for myself. That was what I was passionate about. Right. I chose football to give me an opportunity to get out of there and go get a college degree and stuff like that. But it was, my parents were like, you got to find something that you're like, what's your goal? And are you willing to bleed for it? Are you willing to you're going to fail? We won't be there. You got to be able to pick yourself up and keep going. Find something. And that's to me, that's oh, I want to be a doctor. And they fail the first time. They're like, well, this is hard. I don't really want to do this anymore. Well, then that's not the thing. That's not your thing. Yeah. You need to find a different thing.
Because if you're excited about it, you would have done it.
I think the problem there's a bunch of people, I'm sure there's stories throughout forever, where somebody's like, I always wanted to be a doctor. And then they go through some class, biology or anatomy and physiology.
That's a tough one.
And they're like, you got an F. And they're like, well, I really want to be a doctor. Somebody needs to be like,
yeah.
You could still do it.
If you wanted it, you probably would.
But I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're going to get
starting with an F is pretty hard. So, but saying that is the reality. That's right. You could you could probably still do it. I mean, anybody could still do it. I mean, we could go back to school right now and try to be doctors if we really wanted it that hard.
Genuinely, honesty in education is a problem.
It is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
With great inflation and subsidizing higher education.
Dude, this is the biggest thing. The grade inflation where they're like, an F is now a 20. And you're like, a 20? That's almost no answers right.
What kind of used to blow my mind, and everyone was excited when this happened, no doubt. But you get that test, and you're like, no one made an A on the test. So the highest grade was an 86. So we're going to make an 86 the new A. And everyone else gets bumped up. And you're
ridiculous.
like, yeah. But I'm like, dude.
Smartest kid in class.
So
You're
if
like,
you,
nah, man, you failed. Like, stop.
so if it's truly a true grading system, most of the people should get C's.
Yeah.
Most of the people should get C's. There might be a right center distribution where more people get B's, but that's okay. But now it's like if you don't get an A, you stink. And it's just ridiculous.
What used to crack me up though, like in high school and college, like we sit there and you get your grades, and everyone's like, "Golly, man, this is not fair. This test was too hard."
Yeah.
And I would be like, I know I didn't study. I'm like, how much did you? I'm like, how much? I was like, man, how much did you study? And they're like, well, not that much. I'm like, well, of course the test was hard. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I made a B.
It's
I didn't
testing
study.
your knowledge.
That's pretty good.
know-
I'll take that.
It's literally above average.
I was like,
by definition.
You know what the weirdest thing was recently when I took a college class to be an EMT.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I was 30. I was in my 30s.
I couldn't imagine.
Versus
going back to college.
the kids that were like of college age, is they would be like, these tests, they're not fair.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, why? Why isn't it fair? It was hard. Well, that's not unfair. That just means it was hard.
It was hard for you.
It was hard. Yeah, it was hard
used
for
to
you. And
crack
you're like,
me
I only
up.
got 4 answers right. And I was like, well, that's more of a problem than you think it is.
It
That's
sounds
not,
like you need to study.
Yeah, that's not.
Well, that's
That's
what
not the
people
test
think.
fault.
People think that just because they failed, they're entitled to pass.
Yeah, they're
And
not.
it's
You're
like,
not.
You didn't. You had the same
Dude,
chance as everyone else.
Failing is like you have to fail.
I think so.
You gotta fail. You
Yeah.
gotta fail.
Well,
I think
it's what you do with failure is what defines you as a man or a woman.
I've been in a couple fights, and
No.
I'll be just a couple, but I don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't remember.
Any of them because of the brain trauma.
I don't remember anything about.
You woke
the
up
fights.
later in the bushes.
I don't remember about any of the fights I won. I just remember the ones I do remember, the ones I got my butt kicked. And I think everyone should get their butt kicked every once in a while.
It helps a
I
little
think
bit.
that's valuable.
It'll
It keeps you from mouthing off, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah.
When you hear a man and they're like, I've never been in a fight my whole life, and you're like, how have you never gotten an actual fight?
Yeah.
I mean, there
You've
was a
never seen
while.
anything
There's a
that made
while
anybody
in my
upset?
life that I laughed and I was like, I haven't been in a fight yet. And my dad's like, yeah, you have. And I was like, no, it's not a fight when you're just getting beat up. I was like, it's a fight when you actually fight back.
I've been beat
he's
up
Like, he's like,
before.
that's fair. He's like, you got to get some in there on that.
Your dad's like, I'm 10-0 against you.
My dad undefeated.
He's like 5 years old.
Yeah, your dad's doing this number. You want to get some?
Now, that is another thing. We're going off rail, but that is one thing. 100% right now, I could go beat my dad up. There's no doubt about it. Like, I think we can all agree my dad is smaller than me.
Yeah,
He's
we all
older.
agree we could beat your dad up.
Okay, so, but there's a little hesitant. He has beat me up enough in my life. There's a little, like, it's a little check there, you know, like if someone beats you up more than once, there's like a little, you're like, I
still
beat
get a
him,
shot?
but you're like, but you gotta watch out
You're
for
like,
that
man.
right hook a little bit. You're like, I don't want him to catch one on me. You know, you're like, but
What the heck was I gonna say?
sorry, that was, I apologize. That was
talk
a little
about
off
fighting
rail.
your dad.
Yeah, a little off rail there.
Do you think in the next 10 years there will be? We can probably close. Do you think in the
we'll
next
close
10
this out.
years there's going to be? I don't think college will ever necessarily be like it'll be a drop off in terms of what people suggest that you should do.
I hope it does.
But do you think it'll be more of like we stop pushing, like in high school, stop pushing the kids to just go to college at any cost? Now there's going to be people that have degrees in
There are a lot of
athletic
degrees.
training, physical therapy, becoming a doctor, all these things that you probably should do a higher level of learning.
100%.
But do you think there'll be a less of a push to get these people, like, because ultimately when somebody goes into college, they don't know what they're going to do. They're business administration, communications, these things that don't require commitment.
Psychology.
Yeah, they're not psychology. They don't require geography. They don't require. they don't require. They don't require like a commit. It's not like a commitment. You're not really
Yeah.
committing to anything.
Should we go more to skilled trades, even for things like you're talking about, like athletic training? So let me ask Caleb this question. Your background, education background is
I have my bachelor's degree in athletic training, and then my master's degree is in exercise science with nutrition.
so would that
Nice.
would that be better suited for a skilled trade, to where you're not taking English composition 101, et cetera?
Exactly. I felt like, so my schooling was in athletic training. You have to be accepted into accredited college, and you had to apply and get accepted and then go through the athletic training schooling and that type of stuff. So I was one of 120. I was 20 of 120 people that got accepted into school at my school. And it felt more like a trade school than it did as like a college course.
Right.
Obviously, we had to take those liberal arts studies and that type of stuff along the way, which
Damn
basically
liberals.
that basically did absolutely nothing as far as
For your skill.
improving my skill components and stuff like that.
You're
That's
saying
something-
if
that's
you go
something
for
that-
athletic training, do you need to have English composition?
Well,
I disagree.
I think.
Well, maybe not English composition.
That's
Do you
not
need to
a
have?
great example.
Do you need to have?
Well, no, I mean, like we had
statistics
we had,
101.
Yeah.
You had high school. I mean,
Yeah.
you, like,
Yeah, you
did-
should have
do you not know how to
learned-
write
well,
and read?
Like,
Like,
well,
you
I
had
guess
high
what I
school.
mean is like there's like Laura is a perfect example. She has to write notes.
Right.
So she probably needs English composition because it has to be coherent. Like somebody should grade her on
Yeah,
her
the
ability
reason
to
she's
write.
writing
issue-
notes is to share with other people.
Yes, correct.
Right?
The
So you be able
issue
to express
and
yourself.
the issue and the example that you're giving though is that PTs and athletic trainers speak in the same terminology. So if Andrew's going to talk to me about coding something, I would have no knowledge of what he's saying. English comprehension is not going to give me that knowledge. But if I were to talk to Laura about the terminology or coding, quote unquote, of this specific patient and the history of this patient and that type of stuff, the rest of y'all would have no idea what Laura and I are talking about.
Right.
We learn that in our specific schooling.
Not your
So
English
101
class.
is not teaching us how to get any better at that. It's,
You should be good at that stuff coming out of high school.
That's
get
fair.
4
That's fair.
years.
That's
Exactly.
fair.
I actually disagree.
We get 4 years. in
disagree
high
with
school.
what?
I disagree with the idea that this, I don't know, like these freshman courses have value.
I don't think so.
Is it value added because you were left short in the high school and grade school?
No, because actually.
Let me ask you
in
this:
the-
if you were given
in-
the option to go into code, like what
Well, I was
geography?
about
Hold
to
on.
say.
If you were given the option, you'd be like, you get the degree no matter what. Well, you can pay for English composition or not. You still get the degree. Would you just choose to pay for it because you just think it's the right thing to do? I would skip it.
I see higher
Yeah.
education as like a pursuit of knowledge and enhancing your educational value and your own.
But if you can enhance your educational value without that,
But that's not really what it is doing in
you're
my mind. Like
you're
I mean,
saying
like
that.
to be fair, like software is a great example of something that probably shouldn't be in a college at all. Like that should be.
You could do it without.
trade
Yeah,
school.
you don't need to know.
C++, you're pretty much.
Yeah, you can
good
go
to
learn it. You can go learn the architecture. Maybe go to some school that specializes in teaching that stuff.
There's training.
Yeah.
available,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
that yeah, it doesn't make sense. But like if you're going for philosophy or like geography, I think there is innate value in learning those skill sets of higher levels. Yes.
I would say yeah, but if we improved the expectations of junior high and high school, and even grade school, then I'm not saying that's not necessary for every degree field, but for the majority of people that go to work every day,
Yep.
you don't need those.
Well, it's
I
also
actually agree
Yeah.
with that, but that's not quite the reality. But like so in Europe, for example, I know this specifically for Denmark because I was interested in going to school there. They only do like a 3-year college program because all of our freshman college curriculum is covered in their
right.
high school.
So you-
right. I mean,
but our high school is terrible, and I mean, there's the reason
are
AP,
terrible.
the reason AP is a thing is because AP classes quite literally are your first year college
Yeah.
curriculum, so that's why you're able to skip.
And then the problem is that they make these AP classes for people that go to college, and then you learn all these things in AP classes, and then you go to college, and a lot of colleges do not accept these AP classes as credits.
I don't know, if
Right.
Which
that's
doesn't
really
make-
true though.
That is
It
true.
depends. Yeah.
There-
I can speak from first experience.
Yeah.
Well, if you
It is.
So,
I don't know.
so I mean, you can argue with me as much as you want, but you're wrong.
I'm just saying
it
in my
matters what schools that you
experience-
can get scholarships to, and they don't. A lot of schools do not line up. I had the same thing.
'Cause-
I didn't
because they
even-
want
I
your
didn't-
money is
I didn't
really
even.
what
Yeah,
take,
they want your money.
I didn't
Yeah.
even take AP classes because a lot of the schools I started submitting it, and they were like, "We're not going to accept this." So I was like, "Well, I'm not going to."
Maybe it's
Well, I think
maybe
that
it's
did
changed.
change. I mean,
Maybe
honestly,
it's
I think
changed.
you're right. Actually, like,
But whenever
It's
I
been
was in
15
school,
years since I've been in college.
they would. They said, you graduated with AP English, for example. You still have to take English 101, 102.
did y'all take exams? AP
Yes.
exams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they make it now that you have to like get a certain passing
High-
grade.
yeah.
in the exam.
So that makes sense.
Well, like
Or
even
higher.
You definitely should have
even
to do
even
that
talking
if you're
about
doing
transferring between colleges,
I'm
they
not-
make it a problem.
Yeah,
it's
they
like,
don't even
does my English a credit.
Yeah, but
they're like,
that is
no.
like-
And you're like,
Yeah.
why?
It's because again they want the money.
But,
You're
but
like,
at the end of
well,
the day, that's
'cause
your
they know it's
choice.
subsidized.
That's what I mean. You
if
don't
you
need.
want to go to a good
I
institution,
mean, my
just find
last
one.
my last 2 years of college is where I learned the most about what I
Right.
do. Like, and
Exactly,
it was even,
yeah.
but the first 2 years, I mean, I didn't study, I didn't
Nonsense.
try, and it was like I made A's, got through it. Like I was like, this is nonsense. And I don't. One thing is like I learned a lot of math. Well, I
Good.
don't use that crap. You know what I do? I pick up my phone and I
Right.
get my calculator, and it's like no one. You
Neighbor's
can't
like 3
retain.
+ 3. Hold on 1 second.
So have you ever
just
seen?
hang
Have you ever seen the 8th grade? There was like this famous. In fact, you can check it out. If you look at like in order to pass the 8th grade in Kansas in the 1800s, you had to pass this test, and you look at that test, you're like, I don't think I could pass that now.
Yeah,
Even with Google,
Yeah.
I don't think I could pass it now. It is tough.
really.
And I think there's we've overinflated education at large, and that's affected what is expected of high school students, junior high students, grade school students, college students. It's affected it all. And I think the problem is the root source of this problem is money.
Yeah.
I think it's money.
Are you saying that we don't expect it as much? We
We don't.
expect less or more?
We expect way, way less.
Yeah, that's fair.
and that's a good or bad thing.
it's a bad thing.
That's a horrible thing. There was a
The fact that you can graduate high school and not know how to do your taxes is crazy to me.
it's criminal.
I mean, it's like, I guess they're like, your parents should teach you, but it's like, we're in a learning.
But I'm here most of the time.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean,
Yeah, like 8 hours a day,
Yeah,
minimum.
8 hours. Like, teach me how to do my taxes.
What it all reduces down to, and Adam already kind of hit on, is like if the college or the high school, for example, education system isn't going to teach us these things, and then we have to learn it in college, it's because we have to pay that much more into the
Yeah.
Federal Reserve or like federal student loans. That type of
You had it
stuff.
right the first time, the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, do you want to learn how to invest? Come to college.
So
Yeah, exactly. But that's exactly right. And the fact that we're having to pay this much more, whereas if we came out of high school educated, understanding how to work, and then go to a trade school where you don't have to pay as much and learns more specific skills on exactly what you are passionate about and what you want to work on. Like, for example, going to a trade school on coding or whatever it might be and learn more specifics on that, then you're not paying nearly as much. And you're not having to fork out as much money to the government for them to subsidize you be able to go to school and stuff like that. It all comes down, and it's the root of all evil. It all comes down to money.
Yeah,
is
money,
what
baby.
it really is.
Gotta make that
we
money.
live in a fake meritocracy. Is what it is.
And that
So-
was more conspiracy
we
theory
are.
than anything. But it's
So I love me some conspiracies, but we're going to have to wind this down.
sorry.
So no, that was good. That was good. It was a great discussion I think we had on education, skilled trades, etc. I hope you all enjoyed Mishmash Men. Any closing thoughts, Dusty?
It was super fun to have everybody on
Yeah.
for this
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having
style on the Mishmash Men platform. It was very enjoyable. Glad we decided to do this, and
Yeah.
thanks to the weather for
Yeah,
for
thanks
making
for
it
having
happen.
us on. I love this topic.
Yes,
Very
that's
passionate
good.
about.
Thanks for Andrew sat in and did the producing on this one, so I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So it was fun for me to sit and enjoy. So it was fun.
All right, so we will see you next week on Mishmash Men, and looking forward to it.
Bye, guys.
See ya.